I didn't plan on joining any ritual that night. Honestly, I didn't even believe in that kind of stuff. But sometimes life places you in the wrong place at the wrong time, and before you can understand what's happening, you're already deeper than you ever meant to be. If you're watching this, just remember one thing: curiosity isn't always harmless. Sometimes it opens doors you don't know how to close again. And that's exactly what happened to me when I took part in a strange ritual, one that started as a harmless dare among friends but turned into the most terrifying experience of my life. It all began on a chilly Saturday evening. The kind of night where the air feels heavier than usual, where even the wind seems to whisper something you can't quite hear. My friends and I had driven out of town for a weekend trip, just to get a break from our routines. Nothing dramatic. No plans for adventure. Just a quiet getaway. But you know how it goes. People get bored, someone brings up a story they shouldn't, and suddenly the whole vibe changes. That someone was Ray. He was always the storyteller of our group, the one who loved digging up old legends, urban myths, and local secrets that he found online. But this time what he brought up wasn't from the internet. According to him, his grandfather had once talked about a hidden ritual that people supposedly performed decades ago in that same region. A ritual meant for opening sight, whatever that meant. Ray thought it would be fun to try it out. The rest of us thought he was messing around like always. But the thing about Ray is, he knows how to make you curious. He described it so casually, like it was nothing serious. Just a tradition. Something symbolic. Something harmless. And honestly, at first it really did sound harmless. Just a few steps, something like a mindfulness exercise mixed with an old cultural tradition. No chanting. No dangerous objects. No extreme rules. Just a simple awareness ritual, as he called it. Still, something in me felt uneasy. Maybe it was the way he described his grandfather's tone. Or maybe it was the strange silence in the air while he spoke. But everyone else laughed it off. They insisted it would be fun. They wanted a story to tell later. And because I didn't want to be the only one sitting out, I agreed. We drove farther down the road until we reached an open field near an old farmhouse. The night sky above was almost too clear, like the stars were watching us. The air smelled like damp earth and old wood. Even the grass felt colder than usual beneath our shoes. I remember thinking it was strange how empty everything looked. No animals. No distant lights. Just stillness. Ray stood in the center of the field and told us what to do. The steps were simple enough. Stand in a circle. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Focus on the space around you. Listen carefully. Try to feel things you normally ignore. It sounded like something out of a meditation video, and we all laughed about it. But I didn't laugh long. Because the moment I closed my eyes, something felt wrong. It wasn't anything dramatic. No sudden noise. No strange voice. No supernatural event. Just a shift. Like the temperature dropped, like the air thickened. I felt a pressure around me as if the darkness behind my eyelids had weight. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. But then I noticed I couldn't hear my friends breathing anymore. I couldn't hear anything at all. And that was the moment the fear started crawling up my spine. I tried to take a deeper breath to steady myself, but even my own breathing felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. My heart began beating louder, echoing through my chest, and for a second I wondered if anyone else was feeling the same. I opened my mouth to ask, but the moment the sound left my lips, the air swallowed it. Completely. Not even a whisper returned to me. I snapped my eyes open. The field was still there. The sky was still there. My friends were standing in the same circle. But something was different. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't a visual change. It wasn't anything obvious. But everything felt shifted. Like the world had tilted slightly in a way only I could feel. I called out to Ray. He didn't react. None of them did. They were all standing still with their eyes closed, breathing slowly as if nothing unusual was happening. I stepped back, feeling a tightness in my chest, like something inside me was warning me to get out. To break the circle. To move. So I took another step back. And that's when I saw motion. Not from my friends. Not from the trees. Not from the field. It came from the corner of my vision, something faint like the air itself rippling. I turned quickly, but nothing was there. Just darkness. But I wasn't imagining it. Something had moved. Something had stirred. I whispered my friend's name again, but my voice still felt muffled, swallowed by the night. I reached out to shake Ray's shoulder, but before I touched him, I heard it. A soft sound. Not a voice. Not an animal. More like a faint hum. Slow. Almost like breath coming from the ground itself. I froze. Every instinct in me screamed to run. But before I could take another step, Ray opened his eyes. Except, he didn't look at me. He looked past me, over my shoulder. His eyes widened, not in panic but in recognition. Like he was seeing something he expected, but wished he hadn't. I didn't want to turn around. Something in me knew that if I looked, if I actually faced whatever was there, something inside my mind would change forever. But I could feel it behind me, the presence, the pressure, the cold. It wasn't touching me but it was close. Too close. Ray whispered, "Don't move." His voice was barely audible, trembling with something I'd never heard in him before. Fear. Real fear. Slowly the others opened their eyes too. And every single one of them stared at the same point behind me. Not one of them breathed a word. Their expressions didn't match the silly ritual we had started. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide, their bodies stiff. Whatever they were seeing. I didn't want to see it. But standing still felt impossible. My legs were shaking. My heart was pounding so loudly I felt it in my temples. The cold behind me grew sharper, like ice brushing against my spine. And then, something shifted in the grass. A faint, soft sound. Right behind me. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to run. But I knew deep down that the moment I moved, the moment I broke the stillness, something would happen. Something none of us were prepared for. Ray's voice cracked as he whispered again, "Don't turn around." But by then, I wasn't sure I could stop myself. And that's where everything truly began to fall apart. For a moment I felt like my entire body had turned to stone. The cold behind me pressed closer, not like a touch but like a presence trying to fill the space around my spine. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears, louder than the wind, louder than the soft trembling breaths of my friends. No one else dared to speak. No one even dared to shift their weight. I didn't know whether Ray's warning was meant to protect me or to keep all of us from doing something stupid, but either way I forced myself to freeze. My muscles screamed to run, yet something deeper, something instinctual, kept me rooted to the spot. Every hair on my arm stood upright. My mouth had gone completely dry. The grass behind me rustled again, just a small sound, but sharp enough to slice through whatever bravery I had left. My mind kept trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was an animal. Maybe the ritual had made us nervous and we were imagining things. Maybe the silence and the night were playing tricks on us. But when I tried to cling to those thoughts, they crumbled immediately. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't nerves. Something was really here with us, something that didn't belong to the field or the night. Ray finally took a deep breath. It was shaky, uneven, the kind of breath someone takes when they're forcing themselves to be calm. He whispered, "Keep your eyes forward. Just listen." So I listened. At first, I didn't hear anything except the pounding in my chest. But gradually, beneath it, there was another sound. A soft, steady rhythm. Not quite footsteps, not quite breathing. Almost like a slow vibration in the air. It made my skin prickle. I glanced at the others as subtly as I could without turning my head. They were all staring at the same point, still behind me, faces drained of color, eyes wide with fear. Whatever they were seeing, it wasn't moving closer. But it wasn't moving away either. Then without warning the sound faded. The cold lifted. The pressure in the air loosened. The grass stilled. It was as if the presence had simply dissolved into the darkness. I didn't turn around right away. I didn't trust the quiet. Quiet can be dangerous. Quiet can be the moment before something worse happens. But the others stayed silent too. No one moved until Ray slowly stepped backward, his gaze still fixed behind me. When he finally swallowed hard and said, "Okay, it's gone," the breath I'd been holding finally escaped my lungs. I spun around instantly, unable to hold back any longer. But the field was empty. Completely empty. Just tall grass swaying gently in the night breeze, the outline of the farmhouse in the distance, and an endless spread of shadows. There was nothing there. Nothing at all. But that didn't comfort me. In fact, it made everything worse. Because the looks on my friends' faces told me one thing: they had all seen something. Something I hadn't. Something they weren't prepared to talk about yet. I stepped back toward them, my legs still shaky. What was that? My voice cracked embarrassingly, but none of them teased me. Not this time. No one answered right away. They just glanced at each other, unsure of how to start. Finally, Ray exhaled shakily and rubbed his hands down his face. I didn't think it would actually do anything," he admitted. "I swear I thought it was just a symbolic thing. I didn't know it still worked." "Still worked?" I repeated. "What do you mean still worked?" Ray hesitated. It was the first time I had ever seen him look genuinely scared. Not the kind of fear you feel when you watch a horror movie. The kind that sits deep, real heavy. "It's an old ritual," he said quietly. "Really old. My grandfather told me about it when I was a kid. He said it wasn't for summoning anything. It was for revealing things. Revealing what? Mia whispered, hugging her arms tightly. Ray shook his head as if he didn't really want to say it out loud. Things that are already there. Things we can't usually see. The wind brushed the grass again and all of us instinctively tensed up. Like ghosts? Aaron asked, trying to laugh but failing. No, Ray said, voice barely above a whisper. Not ghosts. They're not human. They're not anything like us. A chill ran down my back again, stronger now because it wasn't coming from behind me, it came from Ray's words. I looked back at the field. It looked normal again. Calm. Quiet. Harmless. But now that I knew something had been there, something only the others had seen, the whole place felt wrong. We stood in silence for a few moments, none of us sure what to do next. Leaving seemed like the smart choice, but none of us could quite bring ourselves to move yet. It was like our minds were still trying to catch up to what had happened. Finally I said, "Okay, seriously, what did you guys see?" Ray looked away, staring toward the dark tree line as if answering might force him to relive the moment. Mia and Aaron avoided my eyes too. It wasn't clear, Mia finally murmured. It wasn't a shape exactly. More like an outline, Aaron added. A shadow that wasn't supposed to be there. But it had eyes, Ray whispered, and the way he said the word eyes made my stomach twist. Not glowing. Not bright. Just aware. I felt the cold return for a second even though the air stayed still. I wanted to ask more. I wanted details. But something in my brain told me not to push. Some answers aren't meant to be forced out. Instead, I focused on the only thing I knew for sure. Whatever they had seen wasn't gone. Not really. It had faded, maybe stepped back, maybe hidden itself again, but it hadn't left. I could feel that much in my bones. We finally decided to head back to the cabin. None of us wanted to stay another second in that field. As we walked, the eerie quiet of the area followed us. Our footsteps sounded too loud. Every crunch of gravel made us flinch. Even the shadows cast by our headlights looked off, stretching too far, bending in strange ways. Halfway back, Mia whispered, "Do you think it followed us?" No one answered, but we all felt the same thing. It had. Even if we couldn't see it, something had changed the moment we finished that ritual. Something in the air. Something in us. When we reached the cabin, none of us rushed inside. Instead, we stayed by the door, listening. The woods around us seemed denser, darker than before. The night felt heavier, as if it was hiding secrets we weren't meant to uncover. Ray pulled out his phone and opened his notes app. "There's more to the ritual," he said quietly. "More than what we did." "Why didn't you tell us that earlier?" Aaron snapped, his voice cracking with fear. Ray looked ashamed. "Because I didn't think any of it mattered. I didn't think it was real. But now..." He scrolled down the page, his finger trembling. "There's something we skipped." "Like what?" I asked. Ray hesitated, then read aloud, "Once sight is opened, it cannot be closed without completing the final step." A cold wave washed over me. "What's the final step?" Mia whispered. Ray stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he looked up, his face pale, his voice barely steady. "I don't know. My grandfather never told me." And just like that, the fear that had followed us from the field settled around us again, thicker, darker, heavier, waiting for whatever came next. The silence inside the cabin felt completely different from the silence in the field. Out there, the quiet felt alive, like something was listening to us. Here, it felt tense, heavy, the kind of quiet that grows between people who are too scared to say what they're really thinking. We stood near the living room, the dim lamp casting a warm but weak glow across the wooden walls. It should have felt comforting. It didn't. Ray kept staring at his phone, scrolling through those old notes again and again, like he hoped a new line would suddenly appear and save us. Mia sat on the couch with her knees pulled up, hugging them tightly, her eyes fixed on the floor. Aaron paced the room restlessly, his footsteps tapping against the wooden panels, the sound edgy and impatient. I stood near the window, staring into the darkness outside. The trees swayed gently, but the movement didn't feel natural anymore. It felt like something was weaving between them, hiding just out of sight. The shadows felt thicker than before, as if the night itself had grown curious about us. "So what do we do now?" I finally asked, not turning away from the window. Aaron stopped pacing. "We figure out the last step. Whatever we opened, we need to close." Ray lowered his phone slowly. "It's not that simple." "It has to be," Aaron snapped. "We didn't ask for this." Ray swallowed hard. "My grandfather didn't tell me the final step because he didn't want anyone performing the ritual." His voice cracked a little. "He said opening this site wasn't a game. That people used to do it when they wanted to know if something invisible was around them. But once you saw it, once it noticed you, it wouldn't just go away. Mia looked up, her voice small. So it noticed us? Ray didn't answer, which was answer enough. I watched the darkness outside shift in the corner of my eye. A subtle movement. Too low to the ground. Too smooth. I blinked and it was gone. I stepped back from the window. We need more information, I said. If your grandfather knew about this, were there stories? Notes? Anything? Ray shook his head. He only talked about it once. He said the ritual wasn't supposed to be used anymore. That it belonged to a time when people believed the world was full of things they couldn't see. Maybe it still is, Mia whispered. A heavy weight settled in my stomach. The idea wasn't comforting, it was terrifying. Because if that thing from the field was real, then what else was out there? How many things lived in the cracks of the world, unseen until someone was foolish enough to open a door? We sat in uneasy silence for a while, each of us lost in our own thoughts. The cabin's heater clicked softly in the background. The wind outside brushed lightly against the windows, a gentle sound that somehow felt wrong now. Every normal noise felt suspicious. After a few minutes, Mia broke the silence. Did any of you feel anything? Before it appeared? I thought back to the field. The cold. The pressure. The way my breath didn't feel like it belonged to me. The way the air swallowed sound. It felt like the whole world went dim, I said. Like the darkness thickened. Aaron nodded. I felt that too. Like something was standing just past the edge of my vision. Ray hesitated before speaking. My grandfather used to say the ritual made people aware of the spaces between things. Not just the empty space we see. The other space. The space where they exist. They? Mia whispered. Ray didn't look up. He called them watchers. A chill ran across the room like a sudden breeze, though no window was open. Great, Aaron muttered. We've got something called a watcher following us. But as sarcastic as he sounded, the fear under his words was obvious. I rubbed my arms, trying to shake off the cold crawling under my skin. Why did it get stronger when we were doing the ritual? Ray locked eyes with me. Because we invited it. The ritual isn't just awareness. It's an invitation. A signal. That we want to see them? I asked. No, Ray said softly. That we're willing to be seen. The room went silent again. Outside the wind picked up. Something tapped lightly against the cabin siding. Maybe a branch. But the sound repeated, slow and steady like a gentle knock. All of us froze. Aaron moved first, walking toward the window with hesitant steps. He peered out into the dark. I don't see anything, he murmured. Then he stepped back sharply. What? I asked. He shook his head. Thought I saw something near the tree line. Probably nothing. But the way his voice shook told me he didn't believe that. Ray stood up. We can't stay here. If it's following us, this cabin won't stop it. We need to figure out what it wants. We didn't invite it for a conversation, Aaron snapped. We need a plan. That's the problem, Ray said. We don't know the rules. He was right. And not knowing the rules was worse than anything. It meant we didn't know how to stay safe. Mia took a shaky breath. Maybe your grandfather left something behind. A journal. Letters. Anything that explains the ritual. Ray froze. What? I asked. He slowly looked at us. There is something. I forgot about it because I didn't think it mattered. Ray, Aaron said sharply, what is it? Ray swallowed. A wooden box. My grandfather gave it to me before he passed. He told me not to open it unless I ever woke the sight. I thought he meant like, awareness. Mindfulness. I didn't know he meant this. Where is it? I asked. At my house, Ray said. Back in town. A long drive away. Mia shook her head immediately. We can't drive back at night. Not with whatever that is out there. Aaron clenched his jaw. We can't stay here either. I felt the tension twist inside the room, thick and suffocating. Outside, the tapping started again. Slow. Deliberate. Like something testing the walls of the cabin. I stepped closer to the window, though my heart thudded painfully. When I looked out, the night seemed darker than it had any right to be. The trees swayed, but the shadows between them felt too still. As I stared, a small shape shifted near the far edge of the yard. Not big enough to identify. Not clear enough to prove it was real. But I saw it. I knew I did. I backed away from the glass. It found us, I whispered. Everyone turned toward me. What did you see? Ray asked. I don't know, I said honestly. Just movement. Mia covered her mouth with her hands. Aaron walked to the front door and checked the lock twice, then 3 times. Ray stared at his phone again, shaking his head helplessly. "We need that box," he said. "Whatever's inside, it's the only clue we have." "But getting there means driving through all that darkness," Mia whispered. Ray nodded. "I know." The tapping outside stopped. And in the stillness that followed I felt something new. Not a presence. Not a cold breath. Something worse. Waiting. The night was waiting for us to choose. Whether we stayed or left, it didn't matter. The ritual had already changed everything. And something was watching every choice we made. We were no longer in the dark. The dark was in us. Ray's words hung in the air, heavier than anything the cabin walls could hold. The idea of driving back into the night felt impossible, but staying here felt worse. The silence outside wasn't normal. It felt aware. Intentional. Like the darkness itself had leaned closer to hear our next move. Aaron ran a shaky hand through his hair. "We can't wait till morning. Whatever is out there, it's not going to lose interest." Mia hugged herself tighter. "But if we leave now, we're going straight into it. What if that's what it wants?" Her voice trembled, and for the first time since we arrived here, I felt something shift inside me. Something between fear and responsibility. I didn't want to be the one making decisions, but all their eyes drifted toward me, waiting for someone to anchor the panic. I swallowed hard. "We need that box. If that's our only chance to understand what's happening, then we can't waste time." Ray nodded slowly, but his expression showed he was barely keeping himself together. "The road isn't far. 20 minutes if we don't stop." "That's assuming the road is safe," Aaron muttered. But we all knew there was no safe option left. A sudden thud hit the back wall of the cabin, soft but sharp enough to freeze all of us mid-breath. Mia gasped and pressed her hand against her mouth. Aaron immediately killed the lamp, plunging the cabin into near darkness except for the faint moonlight leaking through the curtains. We all stood completely still. Another thud. Closer this time. I felt the air shift as if the walls were absorbing something that shouldn't have been there. My chest tightened and a slow chill crawled up my back. It didn't feel like someone trying to break in. It felt like someone checking, testing, searching for a weakness. Ray whispered, "It's following the sound. Anything we do, it hears." "Then we need to move quietly," I whispered back. We grabbed our bags in the dark, fumbling but careful not to make noise. The floorboards creaked softly under our weight, each sound dangerously loud in the stillness. Ray held the keys in his fist, and I could hear the faint tremor in his breathing. Aaron peeked through the window again, barely parting the curtain with 2 fingers. His body stiffened. "What do you see?" I whispered. He didn't answer at first. His jaw tightened. His shoulders tensed. When he finally spoke, it was barely a whisper. "It's standing near the trees." All of us froze. From where I stood, I couldn't see anything, but the way Aaron's face drained of color told me enough. "Is it looking at us?" Mia whispered. Aaron closed the curtain slowly. "I don't know. I couldn't see a face. Just a shape. Like a shadow that shouldn't be standing upright." Ray swallowed hard. "Then we move now before it comes closer." We waited for another sound. Another thud. Another sign. But the world outside had fallen silent again. Too silent. The kind that made you feel like something had stepped closer without making a noise. "Let's go," I whispered. We crept to the door, trying not to breathe too loudly. Ray unlocked it with slow, quiet movements. When he pulled it open, a cold gust of air rushed in, carrying the scent of damp earth and something else. Something faint, like old wood or dust. Outside, the darkness felt alive. We stepped onto the porch, our shoes barely brushing the floor. The car sat a few yards away, the metal glinting faintly under the moonlight. The surrounding trees towered over us like silent witnesses. Mia grabbed my arm. "Don't run. Don't attract it." So we walked slowly, painfully slow, every step measured, every breath controlled. The gravel crunched under our shoes and I winced with each sound. The world felt like it was holding its breath. Halfway to the car I felt it. A shift. A presence. I didn't hear anything. I didn't see anything. But the air behind us thickened again, the same pressure I had felt in the field. The same cold that slid into my bones. Aaron reached the car first and unlocked it with a soft click. We climbed in quickly, making as little noise as possible. Ray turned the keys in the ignition and for a second, nothing happened. My heart stopped. Then the engine hummed to life, loud in the quiet night. Too loud. Way too loud. Ray shifted into reverse, and the headlights washed over the field and tree line. That's when Mia screamed, not loud, but sharp enough that all of us whipped our heads toward her. She pointed at the tree line. Something stood there, just beyond the reach of the lights. A tall, thin shape, still as stone. No details. No face. Just a dark outline that wasn't part of the trees. A shadow standing where no shadow should be. It wasn't moving. It was watching. "Go," I whispered urgently. "Ray, go." Ray slammed the accelerator, and the car jerked backward before he turned sharply and sped down the road. Gravel flew behind us. Branches scraped the sides. The engine roared louder than I'd ever heard it before. None of us looked back. But I felt it. That pressure. That presence, keeping pace with us in the dark even if we couldn't see it anymore. The headlights cut through the narrow forest road as we sped toward town. The trees on either side blurred into streaks, and every shadow between them felt suspicious. Felt alive. "We should have never done this ritual," Mia whispered, shaking uncontrollably. Ray's knuckles were white around the steering wheel. "We're getting that box. Whatever's inside, it has to tell us what to do." Aaron leaned forward. "Just drive faster. Please." But there was a problem. The road ahead suddenly dipped into a long curve, and as we rounded it, the headlights flickered. Just for a split second. In that split second, something appeared in the middle of the road. A figure. Tall. Watching. Ray jerked the wheel and the car swerved violently. Mia screamed. Aaron grabbed the dashboard. I felt the world tilt as tires skidded across wet gravel. For a moment I thought we were going to flip, crash into the trees, anything. Then Ray regained control, breathing hard, shaking. "It's trying to block us," he whispered. My heart pounded so hard I felt dizzy. "We keep going," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "We don't stop. No matter what." Everyone nodded. Silence filled the car again, except for the pounding of the engine and our terrified breathing. The town was getting closer. I could see faint lights in the distance. But before we reached the edge of the forest, something crossed the road behind us. I didn't see it clearly, just a ripple in the darkness, like a shadow slipping between the trees. It wasn't giving up. The ritual had opened a door, and whatever we awakened was stepping through. Not to be seen, but to follow. To watch. And as Ray sped faster toward the town, toward the box, toward the final step we still didn't understand, I knew one thing for certain. The darkest part of the night hadn't happened yet. The moment I stepped back from the window, the air inside the cabin felt heavier than before, like the walls had absorbed everything I'd seen outside and were now breathing it back toward me. My heartbeat was still uneven, and every shadow in the corners looked sharper, darker, as if the darkness itself was watching. I tried telling myself it was just nerves, just exhaustion, but deep down I knew something had shifted. The presence wasn't just near the cabin anymore. It felt like it had followed me, or maybe it had been here all along. I backed away slowly, trying to steady my breathing, when a faint tapping sound echoed from the old wooden floorboards. It wasn't loud, just soft, rhythmic, like fingertips brushing against the ground. I froze, listening. The tapping moved, traveling from the center of the room to the far corner, the one place I hadn't dared to check since all of this began. It sounded like someone, or something, was pacing inside the cabin with me even though my eyes saw nothing. I whispered a shaky breath, trying not to panic, reminding myself this forest had a way of playing tricks on people. But this didn't feel like a trick. It felt deliberate. Then the second twist hit me, not from the cabin but from the journal lying on the table. Without any wind, without me touching it, the pages flipped open on their own. And not like a random flutter. They turned smoothly, purposefully, stopping on a page I was sure I hadn't read before. The handwriting looked rushed, darker, like the author had written these lines in pure fear. My hands trembled as I reached for it, even though every part of me screamed not to. The entry was dated 3 days after the last one I read. The writer talked about hearing the same tapping sounds, the same breathing in the walls, the same strange presence that lingered around the cabin. But then the words shifted into something worse. They wrote that the forest didn't just watch, it communicated. It tried to lure them outside when they were weakest, using familiar voices, familiar shapes. And at the end of the page the author wrote something that made my mouth run dry. "It can take your form too." I didn't understand it at first. Take your form? Like mimic you? Pretend to be you? But before I could process it, the doorknob clicked softly behind me. I spun around, expecting to see the door swinging open or someone standing there. But it was just the knob, twisting on its own. Slow, steady, like a hand I couldn't see was gripping it from the other side. My pulse hammered in my ears as the metal creaked, turning another inch. That's when I heard it, the voice. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to send chills down my spine because it didn't sound like a stranger. Sounded like me. My own voice whispered through the cracks of the cabin door, calling my name with a calmness that felt completely wrong. It was like hearing a recording of myself played back from somewhere too close. The voice repeated my name again, slightly softer this time, almost gentle, like it was trying to convince me to respond. My throat tightened. The journal's warning replayed in my head, and for a moment I couldn't move. I didn't dare speak. I didn't dare make a sound. Whatever was outside, whatever was mimicking me, knew I was listening. It was waiting for me to slip. The doorknob stopped moving suddenly, and the silence that followed was worse than the tapping or the voice. It felt heavy, intentional, like the forest, or whatever was part of it, was thinking, adjusting, planning its next move. I took a step back, slow and silent, gripping the journal tighter. And then another twist hit me, something I hadn't expected at all. The lantern in the corner, the one I hadn't used since I arrived, flickered on by itself. Soft yellow light filled the room, revealing something I hadn't noticed before. The wall near the door wasn't just scratched. It was carved. Deep, thin lines forming a shape that made my stomach drop. It was a figure, tall, stretched, with no face. And next to it, carved smaller and newer, was another figure. One that looked very human. One that looked like me. My breath shook as I realized the truth. This thing hadn't just been watching me. It hadn't just been copying my voice. It had been preparing for something. I didn't know what yet, but the carvings made one thing clear. I was becoming part of its story. And whether I wanted it or not, the forest had no intention of letting me leave before it finished writing the ending. The carvings on the wall stayed burned into my mind long after I stepped away from them. I kept staring, hoping they would somehow change or fade or reveal something that made sense, but they didn't. The tall, faceless figure and the smaller shape that looked like me were carved with intentions I couldn't ignore. And the more I looked at them, the more I realized the forest hadn't just been trying to scare me. It had been warning me, or claiming me. I just didn't know which. But something shifted inside me then. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe finally understanding that running from something I didn't understand only made it stronger. For the first time since arriving in this cabin, I forced myself to stop reacting out of fear and actually think. Everything I'd experienced, the tapping, the voice, the journal flipping, the shape outside the window, always happened when I was scared or when I tried to escape the truth. Maybe the forest wasn't trying to hurt me. Maybe it wanted me to see what the last person here had seen, the writer whose trembling words filled those pages. Maybe it needed someone else to finish what they started. I picked up the journal again and flipped to the final written page, past the warnings and fear. Hidden behind the panic in the author's handwriting was something else, something I had overlooked. In shaky letters they wrote, "It shows you what you're avoiding. The forest only copies what you fear in yourself. It doesn't want to be you. It wants you to face you." It hit deeper than I expected. I'd been running from things long before I ever stepped into this cabin. Disappointments, mistakes, guilt I tried pretending I had buried. Maybe this place wasn't haunted by something physical. Maybe it was haunted by whatever people brought into it. Every strange sound, every shadow that felt alive, every moment I heard my own voice calling from outside, maybe those were reflections of things I hadn't dealt with. But even if that was true, it didn't explain why the carvings were so real, why the voice outside had sounded too clear, too sharp, or why the last occupant had disappeared without ever finishing the journal. The forest wasn't just symbolic. It was alive in its own way. But maybe not in the evil, supernatural form I had assumed. As I kept reading, I reached the final line the writer had scribbled before the ink trailed off. "If it copies you, it's because you've forgotten who you are." I sat down slowly, letting those words sink into me. Forgotten who I am. I'd come here thinking I just needed space, that I needed silence and time away from everything. But deep down, I had been avoiding parts of myself. Choices I regretted, things I never said, people I distanced myself from. Maybe the forest sensed that. Maybe it magnified the parts of me I tried to hide. I took a shaky breath and stood up. If the forest wanted me to confront something, then hiding in this cabin wasn't going to solve anything. And I couldn't let whatever happened to the previous writer happen to me. Their story ended abruptly, but mine didn't have to. I walked to the door, placing my hand on the knob. It felt warm, like someone had just touched it. The same someone who had copied my voice only minutes ago. For a moment I hesitated, but then I reminded myself of the journal's warning. Fear fed the forest. Calm cut through it. When I stepped outside, the night air wrapped around me, cold but lighter than before. The forest wasn't silent anymore. Leaves rustled softly, and for the first time, nothing felt threatening. Shadows stretched between the trees, but they didn't move on their own. They just existed. I walked a few steps away from the cabin before I saw it, The tall shape from before. The figure that had been watching me. It stood between the trees, its outline barely visible, like it was made of fog and darkness woven together. My stomach tightened, but I didn't run. I didn't whisper or step back. I just stood still. For a few seconds the figure didn't move either. Then, slowly it shifted, not forward but inward. Its edges folded, faded, thinned, like mist losing its form. And as it dissolved, I realized something unnerving yet strangely freeing. The shape wasn't losing power. It was losing purpose. Because I wasn't afraid of it anymore. When it vanished completely, the forest seemed to exhale. The tension that had hung around the trees, thick enough to feel, slowly loosened. I didn't hear the tapping. I didn't hear my own voice echoing back at me. The cabin didn't creak under invisible footsteps. Everything was quiet, but in a peaceful way this time. I walked deeper into the clearing until I reached a small patch of dirt in front of the cabin. Something caught my eye, something half buried. I knelt down and brushed the leaves aside. It was a small wooden box, old but still held together. I opened the lid and found a folded piece of paper inside, written in the same handwriting as the journal. You finished what I couldn't. If you leave with clarity, the forest lets you go. That was all it said. I looked around, expecting some reaction from the forest, but nothing changed. Or maybe everything did. The trees no longer looked twisted or threatening. The air no longer felt heavy. And something in me felt unexpectedly calm. I walked back inside the cabin to gather my things. The carvings on the wall were still there, but they no longer looked like warnings. They looked like reminders of the fear I had brought here, and the fear I had finally faced. The smaller carving that looked like me didn't feel like a claim anymore. It felt like closure. When I stepped outside again with my bag, the first hints of morning were touching the sky. The forest looked normal, just a forest, quiet and old and watching in a gentle way. I followed the trail back the way I came, and for the first time since arriving, nothing followed me. Nothing whispered my name. Nothing tried to mimic my steps. By the time I reached the road, the sun had risen fully, warm and steady. I turned back once, expecting to see the cabin through the trees. But it wasn't there. Or maybe it was hidden the way the forest wanted it to be. Some stories weren't meant to be found by everyone. As I walked away, I realized the real mystery in the forest cabin wasn't the journal or the figure or the strange noises. It was the truth I had avoided for too long, the parts of myself I never wanted to face. And maybe that was the forest's purpose all along. It didn't trap people. It revealed them. And sometimes revelation feels a lot like fear, until it doesn't.